Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
You're looking live at PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's Thursday. It means we'll have our college football analyst Brent Beaird on the Titan Tomorrow hotline in just a second. I want to thank David Steele, voice of the Orlando Magic, for our introduction today. If you missed it last night, the Philadelphia Phillies have a youngster throw a no-hitter. And I think that's about all that's going on in the sports world right now. Just getting ready for college football. Let's go straight to the Titan MR hotline with our college football analyst, Brent Beaird. Good morning, Brent. How you doing, man?
Well, it's been a eventful last few days, to say the least, in the world of college football, and we're trying to just be able to keep up with what's happening on the practice field now that everyone is in camp. Be aware, for our listeners, there will be a lot of scrimmages over the next few days. Florida and Tennessee scrimmage today. There are an unlimited amount that scrimmage this weekend. Boy, Shane, I know you've done it, but scrimmaging in this heat, and that's becoming a factor for a lot of these teams too, is trying to deal with the heat. Fortunately, a lot of them have indoor practice facilities. But, I mean, that's just camp. That's football. We're used to it to a degree, but it's still a fun time of year to be able to enjoy this and keep up with it.
Yep, for sure. Gators practiced indoors yesterday. They got to take care of their bodies here and there. It is very, 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 very hot outside for sure. Brent, we got some questions already before we jump into things here for you. Josh from Mississippi wants to know, Brent, could you see Georgia possibly losing a couple games this year? And if so, who are the teams on their weak schedule that could upset them, in your opinion?
Well, that would be tough. I still think Georgia goes to Atlanta, frankly, without a whole lot of difficulty. But I mean, you just don't ever know about what might happen. I mean, I've talked to Georgia beat writers who have said, and I think there's some truth to this, the team that could beat Georgia would be Georgia. And the thing we mean by that is, if they can't rein in their behavior off the field, that could be a real problem. Another problem that Georgia's got is their running backs can't stay healthy. Kendall Milton is struggling again. He's had long time hamstring issues and knee issues, and that's cropped up again. And he's not alone either. Now, Georgia has an early game in September with South Carolina. At the end of September, they go to Auburn. And then right after that, they've got Kentucky. Obviously, they play Florida. And in November, they've got two interesting games in a row. One is home with Ole Miss, and the other is at Tennessee. So, I mean, likely their biggest task is coming in November against Tennessee. But, you never know what can happen in another game on the road in this league. But I guess, Shane, it tells you something if we're really trying hard to find a game where they're going to be struggling in at this point. See, the other issue with this, too, what's an advantage for Georgia? Carson Beck, we think, is going to be the quarterback. So what it amounts to is Beck's going to have the entire month of September before he faces Kentucky, and then most of September and October before he plays Florida, and then you get into November. So the schedule is very advantageous for Georgia, and next year it's much harder. So it will turn around next year if you're a Georgia fan.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, as you mentioned, Carson Beck is penciled to be the guy, but what Stetson Bennett did the last couple of years, you cannot overlook it. And you got to remember also Todd Monken is gone, new play caller as well. So we shall see. Brent, let's jump right into it. I saw yesterday on Twitter, ESPN, SEC Network came out with all their crews. It's interesting, though, that Derek Mason is going into the booth. I didn't realize that. I knew that he kind of retired from coaching, but does that surprise you at all?
Yeah, it certainly does. Former Oklahoma State D coordinator, obviously with Vanderbilt. He would be an analyst on the SEC Network. Now, you've seen him after games like I have. I mean, he's got some fire in him, so he could be and really could do a good job as an analyst. What a lot of these guys will also do is they'll get in front of television and they will kind of reinvent themselves by being on TV. That would allow them possibly to get another job somewhere down the line. So these guys, to their credit, are staying relevant. So no, that was a big of a surprise. So certainly we'll see how he does. I think he'll do fine.
Yeah, I got a couple of messages here on YouTube. Jared or Gerard, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. He's asking about the scared money don't make money hoodies. Shoot me an email at PodUp with Shane. I think that's what it is. podupwithshane@gmail.com. Yeah. Brent, the preseason coaches poll came out. I think the Gators were 28 in that poll. Any thoughts? Did anything surprise you there?
No, by now we basically have seen all of it through the magazines and other polls. I mean, your top four of Georgia, Michigan, Bama, and Ohio State. I mean, that's everywhere. LSU and Florida State. In the top 10, that's everywhere too. Now, Tennessee at 10, I get it, but there are a lot of people who believe that they could take a step back.
I'm one of those guys.
Yeah, and with Milton and with the questionable defense, I get that too. Texas at 12, I think that could go either way. Utah, by the way, is 14. If people haven't seen that, who Florida opens up with. TCU at 15, North Carolina at 20. You've got Ole Miss at 22. That could go either way. Ole Miss could easily be replaced by Arkansas or South Carolina. Texas A&M is 25. That's kind of questionable too. Now, the AP poll that a lot of people swear by and said the coaches poll will be out Monday, probably around noon. So you might want to look for that. Because, look, let's be honest about this. The coaches poll is basically the sports information director poll. And the coach basically signs off on it. It's what it amounts to. Because coaches don't have time this time of year to be sitting down trying to figure a poll out. So that's what we've got. But, yes, very similar, Shane, to the magazines.
Yeah. Got a quick Facebook Live question brought to you by Mel Law. It comes from Andy, says, and it's kind of also piggybacking on the Rose Bowl situation. He says, Brent, does the Pac-12 have any brand left whereby the Mountain West might join those four remaining teams?
I think at this point, just about anything is possible. So, yeah, that would be one way to try to get it done. I think folks may be also aware that Stanford and Cal have been mentioned for the ACC. Now, this was as recent as last night. The ACC presidents, I assume that's on Zoom, and they, in other words, the pursuit of Stanford and Cal has hit some significant roadblocks. So, and the question is, and it's a good one, is why would the ACC presidents be interested in Stanford and Cal? Well, that's pretty obvious because of the academics. They're both AAU schools. Presidents and chancellors love it. And that's one thing that is in play here. Another school that's in play that just came up last night is SMU. SMU, obviously, with that Dallas and Metroplex. I lived there 3 years in the 80s, and it's grown unbelievably since then. And you may know this, Shane. You may have been out there, obviously, in your travels, but SMU has a lot better facilities than people think they do. So what you've got here is Stanford, Cal, SMU. Are they going to the ACC? We're not saying that. We're just saying that they've been involved in speculation about possibly going. But to the original question, I think right now, I don't think if you're a member of the of the Pac-12 and you've been making $20 million a year, and you end up in the Mountain West and you're making $5 million a year, that's probably not a move you're going to make unless you're desperate. But that also is going on. And I've also heard a little bit about these schools just being independent a year or two. So, Shane, there's a lot of options. There are not a lot of options on the table, but there are some possibilities for these schools.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of Facebook Lives brought to you by Val Law. Joe says, we are watching in Cleveland, Mississippi, 3 doors down from Shane's old digs. Enjoy the show.
Wow.
Appreciate that. A lot of people don't know I grew up in Cleveland, Mississippi, up in the Delta. My first 15 years of life. I only lived in Pascagoula for 2 years. So, I was supposed to be a Cleveland Wildcat. Only got to do it for 1 year. Joe also asked, Brent, what do you think about Coach Kiffin's remarks on expanding and travel concerning fans and families?
Well, I mean, I think what Lane is really good about actually voicing what people are thinking. And I mean, he did this at SEC Media Days by talking about, NIL is just legalized recruiting or legalized cheating, as he said. And what Lane's talking about is we're putting all this expansion going on, and we're not thinking at all about families who have to travel. I'd be curious your take on this, Shane. And look, I get that. And unfortunately, these conferences and presidents aren't thinking about the fans. Now, we got into a real discussion on some other stations about this last week, and I'll make this real brief, does there come a time, is there a tipping point for fans and families where they say, I've had enough of this, and unless we change it, we're not traveling and we're not going to games. Shane, I'm wondering if we're getting closer and closer to that happening.
Yeah, it's for football, we've talked about it. I don't think it's a big deal for the teams because everybody charters.
Correct.
And you fly, you spend the night, play the game, fly right back. The other sports, it's going to be difficult. But from a travel standpoint for fans and families, I get it. I mean, my dad was a high school coach. He didn't miss one of my games. Him and my mom didn't miss one of my games my entire career at Florida, meaning he left Mississippi at 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning after a Friday night football game,
right,
and would drive all the way to Gainesville, would sleep in the Cabot Lodge until about 2 hours for kickoff, and then come to the game. And then if we played away, they would fly or use the drive. It was crazy. And so nowadays, I don't know what you're going to do. It's crazy to me. It's not that bad in the SEC. I mean, we still have Missouri's way out there.
Yes.
We got the Texas schools. But what's going on in the Big Ten or whatever they're called now is it's ridiculous, in my opinion. Brent, we got a YouTube question here from David. He says, is it a down year in the SEC talent overall? Are other conferences recruiting better? I'm going to answer that as absolutely not. The SEC is still the cream of the crop.
It is. Well, I think where some of this is coming from is the fact that, and this is really ironic, that this is going to be maybe the best year of the Pac-12 that they've had in a decade. And a lot of it is because of the quarterbacks. They've gotten some tremendous quarterback, like the Penix kid at Washington, Caleb Williams, of course, at USC. So I get the question, but I think where this is coming from and is misleading is there's so much attention on like some of these quarterbacks in the Pac-12 that it's actually downplaying the talent a little bit in the SEC. But Shane's correct. I mean, look, and the other thing for the SEC is you've got a lot of schools that and again, we're quarterback centric here, but we all understand this. If you don't have a starting quarterback, you're perceived as not being very strong, and that, frankly, for this league, it always has more talent than anybody else in any other conference, and that includes the Big Ten.
Silverback Concrete is a family-led team of heavy concrete specialists that build commercial structures of unrivaled quality. Silverback Concrete, you stand on it, we stand by it. We got Brent Beaird, our college football analyst, and also a Heisman Trophy voter on the Titan Tomorrow hotline. The Gators, by the way, folks, 3 weeks from today, this show will be coming to you live from Salt Lake City very early in the morning out there.
Yes.
3 weeks from today. So having said that, though, we have games about 16 days away.
That's right.
Run through some of those games. There's some pretty decent games that, I mean, hell, I'll watch anybody play college football, but there's some decent games on Saturday, August 26th.
There are, absolutely. Navy and Notre Dame in Dublin, UTEP, Jacksonville State, UMass, New Mexico State, Ohio and San Diego State, Hawaii and Vanderbilt. Listen, Hawaii is going through a really difficult time right now with these wildfires out there, and the smoke is covering some of the other islands. Southern Cal actually plays on week 0, San Jose State, and then Florida International and Louisiana Tech are also playing. Now, let me give you a caveat to this. Next year, and I mean in 12 months, we're going to be talking, well, we don't know this yet, but there is a possibility that week 0 next year is going to start the regular season. It's going to be moved up a week, and the reason it's moved up a week is we're expanding the playoffs next year from 4 to 12. So because of that, they've got to do some work with the schedule. Not saying that this is a done deal, but that is one of the options. And that will be announced, obviously, in the offseason, if not before. But keep that in mind, that this may be the last week 0 that we have, because next year everybody may be starting week 0. How about that, Shane?
Which to me makes no sense. It should be week 1.
Yeah, well, they'll call it week 1 by then,
right?
But I'm just throwing the week 0 in there so that people will understand the concept.
Yeah. Nora asked a question here on Facebook Live. He's curious, does UF still have the Spruce Goose, the huge jumbo airplane? He's chiming in from Vero Beach. No, they the only school planes that have a couple of those little 8-seater private jets for recruiting and coaches to fly around. They charter, like football, we're on a Delta charter for games. John says the Big Ten will be now be known as the BTCT, the Big Coast to Coast Conference. So,
pretty clever.
Yeah. All right. On YouTube, Ron has a question for you as a Heisman Trophy voter. He wants to know some of the early Heisman front runners this year. There's some big names that are probably going to win this thing. I think you're going to have a guy for the first time go back to back like Archie Griffin.
Yeah, with Caleb. obviously we mentioned him a few minutes ago. We mentioned Penix. And look, I'm hoping, even as a voter, that we could look. I love quarterbacks. Everybody loves quarterbacks, but we're getting so quarterback centric with this award. Is a lot of it too. So, and look, we can't forget Bo Nix out there too, who has improved during this time. And look, I will throw in some guys like Harold Perkins of LSU, some defensive players. Mason Smith of LSU is a possibility. Jordan Travis of Florida State, I think, will be mentioned in that. So a lot of talk, but a lot of quarterback talk again. So Shane, no insults to quarterbacks, my friend, but I do think, and I do wonder, because the Heisman Trophy, you remember when it used to be a running back award, and now it's mainly a quarterback award.
Yeah, quarterback's going to win it. Andy asked here, as a Heisman voter, do you think USC needs to make the playoffs in order for Caleb Williams to win the second Heisman? I would say no.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And again, USC will go as far as their defense will allow them. USC got something like, it was 22 or 21 takeaways last year for the defense, which is very unusual. If they don't have that, USC may have been a 6-6 team last year. That's how bad that defense is. Because if you remember this, in the championship game for the Pac-12, Utah ran all over them, through them, around them, and up and down the field. So that's something that's got to be fixed for the Trojans.
You want to shoot us a text on the Titan MR text line? It's 352-353-7465, or you can always communicate via YouTube and Facebook Live. Nor says here on Facebook Live, Tua Tagovailoa, I can't pronounce that name, was supposedly offered $1.5 million by the mystery SEC team to transfer. Why wouldn't he transfer if this was true? Many say it was Auburn or the Gators. I will tell you right now, and I have no facts on this, but Brent, there ain't no way in the hell somebody in the SEC offered that kid $1.5 million to play quarterback for them.
Yeah,
there's no way. No way.
Yeah. This is Talia, who plays for Maryland, is who it is, to his brother, and who is developed into a nice quarterback. And I give Loxley some credit. Maryland's supposed to be really good this year, but yes, I had heard that too, that he was offered a lot of money to transfer, instead stays at Maryland. And people may want to watch him this year and see how well he develops.
Yeah, he's a decent little player, but he left Alabama because he couldn't play there. Not saying he couldn't play at another SEC. He's a little dude, and there's no way somebody's going to offer him 1.5. They may have offered him a couple $100,000, but there's no way. All right, Brent, we got a couple of texts on the Titan MR text line. There's 3 or 4 of them. I'm just going to they're all about basically the ACC expansion and what Florida State's going to have to do. Can you give us a rundown on that?
Yeah, keep this in mind. The Florida State situation is they've got to make an announcement in 4 days, on the 14th, what they're going to do. In other words, you've got to let the conference know ahead of time if you're planning on leaving. So in the next 4 days, it's going to be very crucial for Florida State in what they do. Now look, Florida State has made no bones about it. They want out, and they're looking at the grant of rights, which goes through 2036, and they're looking at some other options too. Now they've talked to J.P. Morgan Chase to look at the financials and see what they can do there. And I'm not a financial planner, so I can't tell you all that they've got in mind with this. But I think this may be one of those things where you shoot for the moon in order to make the mountains. And what I mean by that is Florida State's ultimate goal is to get out and get to another conference, preferably the SEC. But if that doesn't happen, what they want to do is they want to get more of a bigger distribution of the revenue. Now, what Florida State's arguing is we've had several games over the last few years where we've had 4 million people that have viewed us. Now, 4 million for TV, 4 million people that's kind of a landmark that or marker that you go by for television. And to their credit, they've been in some of those big games with a lot of eyes on them, and the same thing will happen against LSU. So what Florida State's saying is we really would like, if we're drawing more people and we're drawing the attention, well, we should have more of the money. So I think what may happen here is if they can't get out of the grant of rights, which I don't think they will at this time, they could maybe later, and other teams are looking at that too, is they would get more money. So that those are the things that they're looking at. Shane, I can tell you this, if that grant of rights just mysteriously disappeared overnight, about half that conference will be looking to go somewhere else.
Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting. So correct me if I'm wrong. Next year with the 12-team playoff, that's when the new Big Ten or whatever it's called is going to start as well. I don't really follow them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, all these additions are not happening this year. They're happening next year, and that's going to be the same timing as expanding the playoff. So man, if you think things are nuts now, wait till next year where we've got all these changes that are going to happen then.
Yeah. All right, Brent, let's go around the SEC. What's happening in Alabama? We also have a text on the Titanmar text line from Larry in Montgomery, Alabama, saying he's a lifelong Bama fan, but I'm scared to death about our quarterback this year.
Well, I think they're going to be okay. And the reason I say that is, Larry, is because the rest of the offensive line is going to be better. The running back room is going to be better. They're healthy. The wide receivers. Now, I've said this a lot. There's not a Julio Jones or Amari Cooper or Devonta Smith in that wide receiver room, but they've got some real talent in that room, and they've got some real speed. And I can assure you the defense is going to be better under Kevin Steele. Tommy Reese is a new offensive coordinator. We don't have a handle yet on who the quarterback's going to be. I still think the quarterback's going to be Ty Simpson.
I do too.
I think he gives them the most upside. Jalen Milroe has more experience, but I've never been convinced that Jalen Milroe is very accurate. Tyler Buckner from Notre Dame can give them some pluses too. Now, obviously, they start with Middle Tennessee, and then they play Texas. So that will be a litmus test for them. But they're going to be more physical. They're going to run the ball more. Doesn't mean they're going back to 08, 09 when they had Glenn Coffey and Mark Ingram. But I do think that, Shane, if this makes sense, that and this is kind of like Georgia in some ways, when everybody else surrounding the quarterback is better, at some point I think that lifts the quarterback up and I don't know if it makes the job easier, help me on this, but at least it takes some pressure off of him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's no question. And again, there's that stat out there that, what is it, like Saban has won a national title. What is the stat they threw out there at SEC Media Day?
It's he wins a national title at least every 3 years.
Yeah, something like that.
By the way, the most incredible stat I saw about Alabama that came out this week was that Alabama had more 3-and-outs last year than they had the last 15 years combined.
Good gracious. That's crazy. All right, Arkansas anything happening up in Fayetteville. We know that they have Rocket Sanders he put on a lot of weight. He can still fly. But, Arkansas was so bad on defense last year.
Yes.
You think they improved any there?
Yeah, they added 5 transfers and 6 freshmen, so they should be able to get some guys out of there that will help them. Shane's right on with that. I mean, they had a really good front 7 on defense, but their secondary was terrible. A big reason for Jalen Kentlon, they're one of the better defensive backs in the league, got hurt early. Now, they also lose Drew Sanders and Bumper Poole to the NFL. But, yes, I do think they'll be better. KJ Jefferson comes back, which will be a big plus for them. And Rocket Sanders comes back, too, one of the better back. Next to the Quinshon at Ole Miss, Rocket Sanders is considered by many maybe the second best back in the league.
Got a text here on the Technomar text line from Brent in Shreveport, Louisiana. It's very long. I'm going to paraphrase. He says, I'm sick and tired of Lane Kiffin bitching and complaining about fans and kids having to travel so far with the new transfer rules, this, that, and the other. And he leads the damn league in getting transfers. Go Tigers.
Well, he's correct. Because Lane has as many transfers, frankly, as anybody. They've got like 14 transfers alone that have come on the defensive side of the ball. And Shane, you and I both know, brother, they need all the help they can get defensively. Now, Pete Golding for Alabama is a new D coordinator at Ole Miss. But look, that is that takes a while to learn his defense, so it may not be improved this year.
Yeah. Auburn Tigers, anything new coming out of the Plains?
Jarquez Hunter is back at practice. Hunter was suspended, and Hunter, frankly, is one of the better running backs in the league. I mean, we knew he'd come back at some point, and he has. So he is back with that. Auburn's doing really well in recruiting, so I give them a lot of credit. They've gotten some players from Alabama and from Georgia. Jalewis Solomon is a guy that they recently got, 6'1", 185, real good athlete, so that would be interesting. Quarterback situation is between Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford. I think Peyton Thorne, who came from Michigan State, probably will win that job before it's over.
Florida Gators, what can you tell us what's going on Gainesville?
Scrimmage today. That's going to be interesting. I was looking at some of the numbers for Florida last night, and I know Gator fans know this, but I do think a lot of these numbers are going to be significantly better. I mean, they were 97th defensively, allowing for over 400 yards a game. I think Austin Armstrong would do wonders with that. Also, 77th in passing. I think that will get better. Also, 100th ranked defense. Again, we mentioned that. 49.7 third down percentage allowed. That's going to be improved. Tennessee on third down was allowing like 52% conversion rate on defense on third down. So that's a big deal. And I'll learn how to pronounce his name at some point, but Micah Makuza is no longer wearing the non-contact jersey. They think he's going to be tremendous, and I would agree with that. I think he's a real specimen. Ricky Pearsall had an illness. I think he'll be okay. Shamir James, a linebacker, had a leg injury, and Devin Moore. I think those guys will be back. Shane, if you've heard different, let me know. But I think those guys will be back within a few days.
Yeah, I was speaking with somebody yesterday doing a show. I can't even remember who it was. I did 3 of them yesterday, but this was off the record. And, it all goes back to Graham Mertz. If you had a nickel for every time you talk about Graham Mertz, you'd be rich right now, right, Brent?
Really,
Um,
really.
yeah. So I kind of said, and this person kind of brought it up, and I kind of agreed with him. He was referring to, when Jaden Daniels kind of was a nobody when he came from Arizona State, and then he ended up having a pretty
Yeah.
good year at a different place, and it's just like all the Georgia fans used to criticize playing Stetson Bennett. Well, Stetson
Yeah.
Bennett turned out to be a pretty good player.
Right. Right.
So I'm not saying Graham Mertz is going to, win the Heisman Trophy or be the player of the year, but I think he's going to have a heck of a year. I really do. So,
Well, I agree with that. And real quick, Jane Daniels, frankly, we talk about Heisman guys. There are a lot of people think that Jane Daniels is the best quarterback in the league. I'm not saying that Graham Mertz is going to be the best quarterback in the league, but I'm with you. And I've mentioned this a lot on different radio segments, that what Florida needs is just a guy to make normal plays.
yeah.
And if you've got that and he's accurate, doesn't throw interceptions, that's what you're looking for. You call, people call him whatever they want to, game manager or whatever. I'm with you. I think Mertz is going to be fine, and frankly, I think he may be a real pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I agree with that. Georgia Bulldogs, obviously, we talked about them earlier. Is there going to be any backlash? Anybody going to be suspended for all the off the field nonsense that's happened up there this year?
We don't know that quite yet. And Kirby's been pretty quiet about it. I mean, what he said about the speeding tickets and things like that we're handling this internally. So we haven't heard. Now there could be. Now they've got a lot of games. Look, you start the season with the UT Martin, and then you got Ball State. So if you're going to suspend some guys, you've got 2 games to do it to start the season. My concern for them in the AJC, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, had this article on the violence toward women. Now, look, again, this is alleged incidents, but involved double-digit players, and that my concern is something that's going to come out of that. And again, very little has been said about it, and I'm aware that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution they did not retract the story. They kind of redid the story so that there is a difference there. So for Saint's point, keep in mind those are 2 things going on that could be problems. Now on the field, Kamari Lassiter, starting cornerback, has a foot sprain. Small Mondon has a foot injury. Foot injuries are, for whatever reason, are the theme of the day at Georgia. Mondon's inside linebacker. We mentioned the running backs who are hurt. Again, and remember, Dominic Lovett from Missouri is transferred to Georgia. They just rave about him, so he's going to be very good. Also, Ra Thomas is another transfer that they think is going to work out well. But keep your eye on the running backs. Again, we mentioned Kendall Milton, Branson Robinson, Andrew Paul, guys coming off injuries or have been hurt. That could be an issue, but they'll have time to get those guys up and going.
Let's move down to the Tennessee Vols. Anything coming out of Tennessee that is any concerning, or have you heard any good things coming out of there?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mixed bag with them, like it is everybody else right now, between injuries and guys who are doing well on the field too. I think with Tennessee again has a scrimmage today, so they've got a wide receiver Dante now that they got several of them for that matter. With that, they've got a kid named Thornton that they like a lot. He's 6'5", 214, runs in game 23 miles an hour. I get interested in some of these times. Cooper Mays is back at center. He has had a few injuries, but I think he's going to be okay. Cooper Mays is one of the better ones around. They've got a really good receiver room. Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, one of our favorite names. Nathan Leacock is a guy they really like at wide receiver. Also, Joe Milton, I think, is doing okay. Hadn't really heard anything bad. Hadn't heard anything really, sensational either. But, so I think he's doing fine. Defensively is where they've got to get better. Tamari and Dump McDonald at that star position. Wesley Walker at safety are back after being injured during that time too. So, and I know a lot of these things people don't know about, but they do have some guys that they really like. We mentioned Dante Thornton. Dylan Sampson is running back. Thornton is a wide receiver. So the Vols are getting ready. We'll have a scrimmage today.
Yes, indeed. Brent, a few more minutes, we'll get you out of here. We got a text on the Titan No More text line from Joe. He says, Brent, do you ever go watch the Jaguars practice?
Rarely, because I do so much with colleges and do so many segments during the week. And with First Coast News, it's rare that I get a chance to do that. And I've got a lot of friends, obviously, who do. So I hear things from them at this point. And look, they're going to be good. I think there's some concerns defensively, and they'll get going again with in the exhibition season. They've got some new facilities, obviously. They've got a thing, and the reason I bring this up, and one of these days I love to talk about this, I had a friend of mine that told me that his son's high school team they've got an instrument that measures humidity and heat and some other variables. And when it hits a certain number, you've got to go inside. Yeah. And the Jaguars, believe it or not, have got this urinal situation where when you urinate, it will tell you whether you're dehydrated or not. So my point to this, Shane, is, and we need every bit of it, is in this heat, you've got to be able to measure the numbers. But I know you remember your playing time, and I've had a lot of people remind me, look, when we played, they didn't give us water, maybe a salt pill or two, but we were in the heat, and it was probably as hot then as it is now.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know, but I'm sure you remember those times.
Yeah, it's definitely changed for sure. All right, two things before we get you out of here. Touch on A&M. I think A&M is going to surprise a lot of people this year. And then what's going on up in Tallahassee? Yeah,
I think for A&M, I mean, they're still very pleased with where they're going. Jimbo is, again, letting Bobby Petrino run the offense. Both the quarterbacks, Connor Weigman and Max Johnson, have looked good with that. I think they're pleased with the offensive line. They love the running backs and Amari Daniels, Levon Moss, and Reuben Owens. They have maybe the best wide receiver group: Noah Thomas, Moose Muhammad, Evan Stewart, Anaya Smith in the league, and that's not even exaggerating, is it, Shane? They're that good. FSU had a blow this week. Frankly, because Darrell Jackson, their defensive tackle, the NCAA did not allow Darrell Jackson and a North Carolina receiver, Devontae Walker, to be eligible immediately. Their waiver was denied. I don't know where a lot of this is, or we don't have time to go into it, but the NCAA, I think this is kind of them showing a little bit of teeth. They've been a paper tiger for a while. And by the way, for folks in Jacksonville, Florida State's practicing in Jacksonville today and tomorrow. They've done this over the last few years to where they come in. I've got to double check and see where they're practicing, but they will be here during that time. But very much a lot of excitement for the Noles and that LSU opener in Orlando, Shane.
Yeah, it should be a good one. I still think LSU takes care of them easily, but we shall see. Real quick, we just got a text from Billy about Miami. It's like we're not hearing anything about the Hurricanes.
Yeah, and we're not ignoring them, believe me. Sometimes we just kind of run out of time is what happens. Tyler Van Dyke, I think is doing well. The difference with the Canes this year, Shannon Dawson is a new offensive coordinator, and they're going to run more of the air raid, which is going to be interesting. Now, they lost 20 players to the transfer portal, and they added double-digit players from the transfer portal. Cam Kitchens at safety is really a tremendous player. He's an All-American type guy. So continue to watch for him. The offensive line, I think, will be better. So that Matt Lee, their center, they really like, is the Notre Dame Miami series that was going to start in 24 has been pushed to 25. So we will, and I appreciate the question very much, we will do more on Miami and Florida State in the coming weeks. They had maybe a transfer, Chris Graves, a cornerback, who has committed to Ole Miss, speaking of transfers to Ole Miss. But I think they're a little more optimistic in Mario Cristobal's second year.
Brent, great stuff as always. Sorry, I lost track of time. Kept you way too long, my man. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Good. We'll look forward to it. And we appreciate all the questions. And Shane, it's great to have all these people from so many different states listening and watching the show.
No doubt about it. That's Brent Beaird, our college football analyst. Join us on the Titan Tomorrow hotline. Take a quick time out, come back. Got more text and comments to get to. You're watching and listening to PodUp Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peaceland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Q Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Attention all Gator fans, Meldon Law is giving away a chance to experience the Florida-Georgia game like never before. 2-night stay at the Hilton on the River, dinner at Ruth Chris Steakhouse, 2 premium tickets to the game, and a football signed by Coach Billy Napier, and much more. Go to the Meldon Law Facebook page and look for the VIP experience for 2. Good luck and go Gators!
Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point is the flagship restaurant of the Florida Gators, the hottest restaurant in Florida in the heart of Gator Nation. That's Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Check them out at spurriers.com. We got to get us a shirt like Jeffrey Meldon. That was something else. Daryl says real quick on YouTube, Shane, in your playing days in the National Football League, how do you adjust to a different altitude if you had to go to Denver? There we didn't really. I tell people when you played in Denver, or you played down in Miami, wherever it was, just a normal week. I think that's how Florida's approaching it as well. Nor says Meldon's Gator shirt is off the chain. Yeah, it's quite interesting for sure. We had a couple of text on the Titan Our text line from Jim. Wanted to know who I thought the best running back was on the roster. I think it's Montreal Johnson. When I saw Montreal last year, I can't remember if he was here at spring ball or if I saw him for the first time in fall camp. I was like, this dude is legit. He does so many things well. And, he's freshman of the year in the Sun Belt Conference and then had a heck of a year last year, his first year in the SEC. So he's a heck of a player for sure. Ruse Ogre State Farm offers a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ogreinsurance.com. Give them a call at 352-240-1779. I want to thank all Brent Beaird for joining us on the Titan Number Hotline. Appreciate all you. I got all these screens set up with my phone for the text line. I got the YouTube going. I got the Facebook Live going. I got to get used to it. A lot of multitasking going on here, folks. But let's get to This Day in Sports, brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. On this day in 2014 at the PGA Championship at Valhalla Golf Club, which I've played, that's in Louisville, Kentucky, Roy McIlroy, can't speak, of Northern Ireland, wins his second PGA Championship by one shot over Phil Mickelson. That's This Day in Sports, brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Don't forget, if you want to attend Coach Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's 2-year anniversary party, it's Monday night. I think it goes from like 5 to 10. I'm sure there's still some tickets available. You go to spurriers.com. I know there'll be a lot of coaches, old coaches. Our coaches will be worrying about practice, but you'll have a bunch of media folks there. So it should be a good time for sure. Kenny says, how does a guy like Montreal get missed in those Power 5 recruiting? Maybe he was inch too short. It's crazy. I tell this story all the time. Let's see, do we have time for it? Yeah. So my son was an all-state quarterback as a junior and a senior at Gainesville High School, 6A football, threw for a ton of yards, a lot of touchdowns. I was just the offensive coordinator, just called the plays. I'm sitting in the head coach's office after his junior year, which he had threw for a ton of yards and a bunch of, I think, 30 touchdowns or something. This is in spring ball. I'm over in the corner doing some stuff, plays or what have you. A Missouri coach walks in, and what happens is when they come in, they usually have a sheet of all the rising seniors on that high school team. And I heard him, he starts talking about some of the receivers. We had a kid named Jalen Kelsey who ended up going to, I can't remember where Kelsey went. But anyway, he's talking about this receiver, this running back. And he goes, tell me about your quarterback, man. I watched him on tape, and boy, he can throw it and has tremendous stats here. He's won a lot of games. How tall is he? He says 5'10". He goes, all right, let's go to the defensive lineman. Just overlooked him. That was it. So a lot of these especially SEC Power 5 schools have a standard. If you don't fit those measurables, they don't care who you are, what you've done, they overlook you. And that's kind of how Billy and his staff are. If you look, when we look like Georgia and those guys, we're getting closer to Georgia and Alabama, with these 6'5", 6'6" linemen. You're not going to see us signing any 6'2" linemen or a 6'1" center. Ain't going to happen. That's just how they are in today's world. So hope that helped answer your question about Montreal. I don't know if Montreal, I don't even know what his straight line speed is. Maybe it wasn't fast enough for Power 5 schools, but he is a damn good running back, and I'm glad he's on our team for sure. So anyway, tomorrow we'll have JC. We'll do some picks just to have some fun. I got a couple other guests waiting for them to chime back in to see if they can join the program. But folks, we are 3 weeks away from the Florida Gators and Utah Utes, and this show will be coming to you live from Salt Lake City this time in 3 weeks. Have a great day out there, folks, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.